Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 582. 582. October the 19th, 2018, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. What an incredible journey. Great to have all of you with me on this journey. You know, something I used to talk about a lot when I first started doing these videos. Essentially what my TowerGate videos are, they're essentially a diary or a journal. Because when I first started doing the TowerGate videos, the day that Trump tweeted out that he understood that Obama had been spying on him, I thought, wow, this is incredible. If that's true, this is going to be the biggest story in the history of the world, right? Certainly the biggest political story in America, much bigger than Watergate. And so I decided I would follow the story. And I first thought, yeah, I'll go get me a notebook and write all this stuff down and keep tabs and like a diary or a journal. And then I thought, well, you know, I'll just do a video. I'll just do a video of it and then keep track of my notes. And eventually I did set up a blog and everything to keep track, and that's kind of where my notes go, is into my timeline on my blog. And of course I do these videos kind of like a diary or like a journal. So it's kind of like I'm sharing my diary or my journal with anyone who cares to listen as we follow this story and watch it unravel. And that's what we're all doing here. We're following this story. It's a hell of a journey. So we have some good days, we have some bad days. There's been a lot of frustration. In the early days of TowerGate, it was very, very dark. It was very dangerous for a very long time. But certainly we've turned the corner. We have the upper hand now. And it's just a matter of time of following through, applying the pressure, public pressure, to make sure that we see that the criminals who perpetrated this fraud and these crimes are held accountable, that face justice, real justice. And that's what we're in search of here. We're chasing the truth. We're chasing justice. That's what all these videos are about. And I'm very happy to share this experience and this journey with all of you. Thanks so much for stopping by. Let's get to it. Well, yesterday, or day before yesterday, it may have been, I talked a little bit about this candidate running for governor in Georgia. Her name is Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams. And I was talking about her being dumbass of the week. She was the dumbass of the week for a comment that she made. Well, she's continuing to make crazy comments. So I'm just following up on more crazy comments by Stacey Abrams. So she has stepped on it again, and this time she's giving a speech, and she says that jobs in agriculture and hospitality aren't worth working in. Instead, she wants people working jobs in renewable energy because climate change is real. First of all, there are no jobs in climate change. There are no jobs in green energy. Wasn't it Barack Hussein Obama that was going to revolutionize the energy sector and create millions and millions of green energy jobs? What do we get? A bunch of left-wing Looney Tunes who started up these green energy companies, totally subsidized with billions of dollars from the federal government. And even with all those billions of dollars in federal subsidies, they all still collapsed because nobody wants to buy that garbage. It's highly overpriced junk. There is no green energy, renewable energy industry, really. It's very, very tiny. And the agriculture and hospitality industry is a massive industry, which does import a lot of foreign workers. A lot of people who come here from foreign countries who are trying to get a start in this country start out in the hospitality industry, start out in the agricultural industry. And so these are valuable jobs, and to the people who do these jobs every day, they're valuable jobs. They're hard jobs. They're jobs that we need to have done. And there is something about any type of work that you do, whether you're a janitor or the president of a bank. It really doesn't matter. You know, it's about what happens when you get up every day and go to work and earn something you worked for, and you keep doing better and better. And if you get to be really good at whatever it is, whether it's picking a pepper or whether it's changing a bed sheet, If you get really, really good at it, pretty soon you'll become a supervisor. And then that will lead to a higher position and a higher position. You can start out picking beans and cleaning toilets and end up owning the company in America. Miss Abrams. These are valuable jobs. Hardworking people do them. And it's disgusting and despicable to talk down to these people this way. You're basically saying to these people, the work that you do isn't important. You're not important. You need to be working in green energy. There are no fucking green energy jobs. Someone slap this woman across the head and remind her there are no green energy jobs. Very few. Very few. There's no green energy industry. Maybe in the future. Certainly we're working on these technologies, but that's many decades down the road. There's a lot of jobs in the oil industry, though, right now. Big paying jobs, too. Big paying jobs in the energy sector. And it's not green energy, renewable energy, any of that crap. Obama had 8 years to prove it, and he couldn't do it, even with all those federal subsidies. Somebody slap Miss Abrams, and whatever you do, don't vote for her if you live in Georgia. Do not vote for her if you live in Georgia. She'll destroy your economy there in Georgia, and she's nuts. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for Miss Abrams. Then she goes on Meet the Press, and she tells George Stephanopoulos this past Sunday morning that Glasgow County in Georgia was hit very hard by Hurricane Michael. Glasgow County in Georgia was hit very hard by Hurricane Michael. Well, the only problem with that is that there is no Glasgow County in Georgia. No county in Georgia called Glasgow. Glasgow. Doesn't exist. Miss Abrams, you're from Georgia. You want to be the governor? That's like Obama telling us he went to all 56 states, or 57 states, or whatever he said. We cannot put these people in power. If you live in Georgia, you do not want to vote for Miss Abrams. She's dumber than a walnut. Absolutely. These people are starting to make me angry. I'm getting very angry with these people. Just about fed up. The Democratic activist that attacked this Republican campaign worker, her name is Kristen Davison, who was working for the Nevada gubernatorial candidate Adam Lexalt, and who was assaulted. As I told you yesterday, they did get the attacker. His name is Michael Stark. He's a real winner. Stark has a long history of attacking Republican campaign workers. He has been arrested multiple times for it. Stark works for the left-wing mob outfit named American Bridge 21st Century, founded by David Brock. That's right, David Brock. What a nut. Total left-wing nut. He's also the same guy that was stalking Devin Nunes. This guy's dangerous. He needs to be taken off the street. At least he's in jail for now. They should press charges against him for, I believe it's assault or battery. One of the two. I don't know if it's a felony type charge, but this guy needs to be something, they need to evaluate his mental state. He's got a lot of problems. But that's one down, and I think there's another one who was assaulted. Actually, two that were actual politicians running for office. Two of them were assaulted too. One of them punched. Hopefully they'll find those attackers. And they're all coming from the left-wing movement, the resistance. That's Hillary Rodham Clinton's resistance right there. That's her resistance. That's her people. That's her peeps. Woman is pure evil. Rosie O'Donnell, of course, is now calling for the military to carry out a coup on Trump. Well, Rosie, the military isn't going to carry out a coup on Trump, I can assure you that. But there may be some military tribunals for some of your friends. That's right, Rosie. Some of your friends may be headed to a military tribunal. That's what a lot of people are saying. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it could happen. There's a better chance that that will happen than the military taking out Trump in a coup. If anything, the military supports Trump and Rosie, they think you and your friends are crazy. Crazy. And they're right. Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos is scheduled to talk to Congress on November the 25th. That's next week. Now, Freedom Caucus members, a couple of them, want some documents relating to Papadopoulos to be declassified. These documents apparently show that the FBI had exculpatory evidence about Papadopoulos that was not presented in his case. Some of this information comes into direct contact with things regarding the Carter Page FISA warrant. In other words, there's some things in these documents that should have been part of the exculpatory evidence in association with the Carter Page FISA warrant that were left out along with a lot of other things in those FISA warrants. So Papadopoulos is dying to tell what he knows. He's got a lot of questions. He's been tweeting up a storm, naming Halper and Downer and Misfit as British agents who set him up. And who were they working for? Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan. That's why John Brennan's coming unhinged. He knows what's coming. Mark Meadows emerged from a meeting today after the second meeting with former General Counsel of the FBI, close to both Comey and McCabe, James Baker. And after coming out of that meeting, Mark Meadows was surrounded by the press, and he seemed to be very animated, to say in the least. And in this very animated state, after coming out of this hearing with Mr. Baker, Mark Meadows said, Rodentstein needs to resign immediately. What did Mark Meadows learn from Mr. Baker in this follow-up meeting today, or yesterday, would have been Thursday? What did he learn that made him come out of that meeting so animated and motivated to call for the immediate resignation of Rodentstein? Well, I think that it's pretty obvious what he learned. Was he got confirmation of what they suspected, which is that Rodentstein, remember, right after the meeting where Rodentstein talked about wearing a wire with Andy McCabe, where Lisa Page was in that meeting, Lisa Page and Peter's Been Stroking Us had a meeting with Baker, and they informed him of something having to do with Rodentstein talking about wearing a wire and doing a 25th Amendment coup. And apparently what they learned today, this is what you have to conclude, what Mark Meadows learned today from speaking with Mr. Baker again, is that Baker probably said, yeah, they were serious. Peter's Been Stroking Us, and Lisa Page came to me in a meeting and said, hey, we were just in a meeting with McCabe and Rodentstein, and they got kind of heated in a heated exchange. It got pretty ugly. They're calling on each other to recuse themselves. They're fighting over control of this investigation. And Rodentstein is talking about wearing a wire and pulling off a 25th Amendment coup. This is what, obviously, Baker told Mark Meadows. And now Meadows is saying, hey, Rodentstein needs to resign immediately. This is all that you can conclude from this. We'll continue to follow this as it heats up, because there's a little bit more to learn about this here in just a moment. First of all, let's do a follow-up. Before we get back to that, let's do a follow-up on a story we covered yesterday about the leaker, this Natalie Edwards. So now we know that, of course, she leaked 11 stories to BuzzFeed that were basically financial and documents, banking records on Manafort Gates and this other character, Peter Smith, who we learned was a guy who was researching the Hillary Clinton State Department emails, who's now deceased, by the way. Now, as it turns out, it wasn't just Mrs. Edwards. It wasn't just her involved in this plot. It turns out that one of her bosses, of which she has 6 bosses, it turns out one of her bosses was involved in this as well. We're not 100% sure who that was, but there's some evidence that it may have been an individual named Thomas Ott, O-T-T. Thomas Ott worked for Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice. And he also worked with Andrew Weissman, who is Uncle Bob the Executioner's top attack dog. And we know about his history. We also know that it wasn't the FBI or DOJ that discovered this. We know that now that it was the Inspector General of the Treasury Department that discovered this, not the FBI or DOJ. Not Sessions, not Rodentstein, none of them. Not Ray. No, no, no. The Inspector General from the Treasury Department is the one who discovered this. And we also now can pretty easily figure out that the Department of Justice knew about this. And they didn't just know about this Natalie Edwards, but they also know at least one of her supervisors, this man, Mr. Ott, Thomas Ott, was somehow involved, likely involved. And they are covering that up. They blacked out his name. Didn't mention his name. Either blacked it out or didn't mention it. One of the two. In other words, they're covering up for another DOJ insider who's part of the criminal plot. We will find out soon. We will get confirmation as to whether or not Thomas Ott was the supervisor who was also participating in these leaks as part of the deep state coup. And something tells me we'll find out that these people will be further connected to other people. They'll be connected to other people. You can take it to the bank. They're not just operating independently. All these people and all these things are connected. That's what we're going to learn, because that's what we always learn. So Rodentstein is going to be doing a closed-door session next week, the 24th. But he's only going to have 4 people there. 5 people. He's going to have the 2 heads of the committees, that would be Goodlatte and Gowdy, and the 2 ranking Democrats, which will be Jerry Nadler and Elijah Cummings. And there will be a court recorder taking a transcript. No Jim Jordan, no Mark Meadows, no Gates, none of those guys. Just Goodlatte and Gowdy, along with the 2 hacks, Elijah Cummings and Jerry Nadler, to interview Rodentstein, where he will probably lie or just not answer the questions. In due time, my friends, in due time, just as soon as the elections are over, just as soon as the midterms are over, and Uncle Bob shuts down his witch hunt, then it's all going to drop. And Rodentstein, if it turns out that he was serious about wearing a wire and getting Trump in a 25th Amendment plot, he's going to jail, prison, real prison, hard prison, along with a lot of his friends and some of his enemies, some of them named Andy McCabe. Judicial Watch has now received documents confirming something we've known for a long time, confirming that there were 340,000 emails on the laptop of Anthony's wiener. 340,000 emails on the laptop of Anthony's wiener between the Rotten Reverend and Huma. 340,000 emails on the laptop of Anthony's wiener between Huma and the Rotten Reverend Clinton. Judicial Watch now has the documents. That means Comey lied again. Because what did Comey tell us? Oh, he told us under oath, that through the wizardry of the FBI's technical people, they were able to review 700,000 emails in 3 days. So he could exonerate the Rotten Reverend Clinton for a second time. But we now know that's not true. We now know there were 340,000 emails between Huma and the Rotten Reverend Clinton, and not a single damn one of them got looked at. Not a one. We know that. I read the document the Judicial Watch has on their website. You can read it too. Right there, the FBI agent says, I can't look at this. The warrant that I have is not sufficient for me to look. I can only look at the title, the metadata, and see who it's to and from. I can't go in and read the body of the email. But you may want to, or you may want to extend the warrant. I'm turning it over to you guys, whatever you think. Let me know what to do. That's what the FBI agent says in his report. Then Comey goes and tells Congress that they did look at 700,000 emails because of the technical wizardry of the FBI, when we now know it was simply Peter's been stroking us, along with the 2 DOJ lawyers. That's the only people, and Andy McCabe, were the only ones who really knew once they took possession of that laptop, which sat around for 28 days before they even bothered to look at it. They tried to put it off until after the election or bury it altogether. But then the FBI agent down in the Southern District of New York realized that they were sitting on it, and he didn't want to be a scapegoat, so he threatened to go public with it. And that's what forced Comey to come out and have to admit that they had the Wiener laptop. But then he cleaned it up again by lying to Congress and all of us under oath, saying they did look at those emails when they did not. We now know from other documents that we received from the IG report that came out a while back that the FBI actually only looked at 3,000 of the 700,000 emails, and not a single damn one of them was the 340K between Huma and Hillary. And we know that the person who individually selected the 3,000 emails to look at was Peter's been stroking us. Now you know why I'm angry. We are now getting confirmation almost every day on things that we've been talking about here for a year and a half that we knew were true, that the deep state players have been denying and lying about over and over again. How Comey is walking around a free man right now is just absolutely beyond me. We have now caught him in so many damn lies from that testimony he gave under oath. He should be locked up. It's just mind-boggling. We have no Department of Justice. We have a Department of Injustice. The guy running the show there now, Sessions, recused himself, so now we got Rodentstein, the guy who's part of the deep state coup, running the investigation. And then we get Uncle Bob. What's he investigating? Trump-Russia collusion. There is none. Based on a dossier that was a fraud. And a bunch of leaks coming from deep staters. And apparently some of them were feeding the stuff directly to his right-hand man, Mr. Weissman, who's corrupt as all hell. This whole thing should have been shut down. And when we get to the bottom of this, I want dicks in the dirt. Dicks in the dirt. Every one of them. We need to rub their dicks in the dirt. They need to be castrated, stretched, and quartered, and then held accountable for their crimes. What a nasty group of people, huh? Well, last week, the last week and a half or so, we focused on the House races. And there was 38 races that I covered. And there's a few more that people mentioned in the comment section. There are also races that may be in play and are consequential, and I thank you for putting that in the comment section. I'm sure those are important races that you're making us aware of. Thank you for doing so. As I said, right now, because of the massive amount of money being pumped in by Soros, by the rotten Reverend Clinton's various outlets, by that idiot out in California businessman, by Bloomberg, by Warren Buffett. I mean, these guys are just literally writing checks for $10-20 million. And we have literally more than half of the races for the House of Representatives right now where the Democrats have 2-to-1 money advantage, because you got Steyer and Buffett and Soros and all these people writing these monstrous checks. Bloomberg just wrote a $100 million check to defeat these House Republicans so the Democrats can take control of Congress, the House of Representatives, so they can shut down all of the investigations into the deep state coup. Holding on to the House is the most important thing. We have no problem with the Senate. We're going to hold the Senate. We're going to do very well in the Senate. We're going to gain in the Senate. No doubt about it. But we need to hold on to the House, and it's going to be tight. We had 45 Republicans retire. Fortunately, many of them retired because they were either A, anti-Trumpers and didn't want to serve with Trump as president, or B, they were anti-Trumpers and knew they would be primaried and defeated and didn't want to be embarrassed. But that also creates 45 seats that, are open seats. And in an an off presidential election year, a lot of times you lose those seats. History shows that that's, fairly common for that to happen. So we've got the Democrats pumping 2-to-1 money against us, using every political tactic in the book, dirty tricks. God knows how many illegals will be voting in this election. It's really a dicey situation, and that's why I focused on those House races to let you know, if you live in those districts, you have got to get out and vote. If you can get some other people to get out and vote, that would help. We have to have a big turnout. This race is going to come down to two things. Number one, turnout by everybody, and number two, whites, I wouldn't say white, but suburban housewives, suburban women living in the suburbs. And right now they're voting slightly, I think 53% Democrat. So, it's going to be tough. If you're a Republican suburban woman, you need to get out and vote. It's very, very important. And everyone needs to get out and vote, but especially suburban women, whatever that is. If you're a suburban woman, I don't know what that is. Maybe you live in the country. Still get out and vote, all right? But anyhow, that is the status of the situation. It's absolutely critical that we hold on to the House. So that's why I went through all those House races. I'm going to be starting on the Senate races. Likely we'll start on that tomorrow. There's about a dozen that I'm going to be focusing on. Now, it's funny, when I first began doing my research on this about 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was only about 7, 8, maybe 9 Senate races that were in play. But now there's 12. Now there's 12. So there's 3 races that have just come into play just in the last week and a half or two since the Kavanaugh hearings. We've got 3 more races that are now in play. But as I told you, it is Friday night, and I told you back on Monday that I was going to be willing to go out and make my prediction for the midterm elections. And I realize it's still 3 weeks out. Things can still happen between now and then. Anything can happen between now and then that could change the race. Anything. October surprises are, of course, very well known. You could bet that both Republicans and Democrats may have a few tricks up their sleeve, things and such. I think the Kavanaugh was supposed to be one of the October surprises for the Democrats, but it backfired. They probably have other plots up their sleeve. You just never know. But in 2016, I came out and made my prediction about a month before the election. And I came out and said a month before the election in 2016 that Trump would win. I confidently said Trump would win. And then about a week before the election, I said that Trump would win with 302 electoral votes. I was off by 2. He ended up getting 304. So I was pretty accurate in 2016. Now, why did I say that? Despite the polls, what the polls were saying and everything else. Well, the first thing, I was looking at these crowds. Trump's drawing these incredible crowds. And I'm seeing Hillary can't fill up a phone booth. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. How can Trump be so far behind Hillary when she can't draw any people? And he's packing them in, standing room only crowds and huge arenas. Something's not adding up here. I understood about the fake polls. I never believed them. And I knew that they were being weaponized. It was just something in my gut. I just kind of felt it. There was kind of like some energy that I was picking up on, that there was something very special was going to happen in this election in 2016. And so I wasn't surprised the night that Trump won. I really wasn't. I was a little surprised how he won. I was surprised he won Wisconsin. I wasn't that surprised he won Florida and Pennsylvania. I pretty much thought he would win Florida. I knew it would be close, but I thought he would win. Pennsylvania, somewhat of a shocker, but, based on the issues that Trump was campaigning on, bringing back steel, it's a major issue to people in Pennsylvania. And so I thought that may be something that could have an effect, but it was just a gut feeling more than anything else. And it's my prediction now for 2018 midterms is largely the same thing, kind of a gut thing, but there's also a lot of numbers out there and a lot of things that I'm looking at. You look at how well we're doing with the Senate races, and I think to myself, well, if we're going to do really well in the Senate, why wouldn't we do well in the House? Why would we do great in the Senate races but not in the House races? That's kind of puzzling. We have a lot more data on the Senate races than we do on House races, by the way. When I look at the crowds that Trump is drawing, he's drawing just as big a crowds as he ever drew. You look at what his approval rating was going into 2016. Look what his approval rating is now. It's much higher. Look at what the approval rating was of Obama or Bush or Clinton when they went into the first midterms. And look at where Trump is. He's sitting around 44%. Some polls have him higher. Rasmussen has him at 50. It's probably an outlier. But I think he's probably somewhere in the 44 to 46% range. If that is true, he's drawing all these crowds. You look at the disaster that the Democrats are. We already know that people lie to pollsters because they don't want to admit they're going to vote for Trump, what some people call the monster vote. I don't know why people who came out and voted for Trump in 2016 will not come out and vote for, he's not on the ballot, but vote for a Republican Congress to continue his agenda, because they're smart enough to know, well, if we like Trump, we like what he's doing, why will we elect Democrats to throw a wrench into the spokes of everything? Well, they wouldn't. It doesn't make any sense. To me, it only makes logical, common sense that people who like Trump and voted for him, he probably has more supporters now, are going to come out and vote for Republicans to continue what he's doing. This just seems common sense to me. Of course, we always have to figure in the fact that the Democrats are able to, they have these big money billionaires who throw millions and millions and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, so that they're literally outspending Republicans in some really critical races 2-1. We have Republicans being outspent 2-1, and it's coming from Soros, it's coming from other billionaire liberal Democrat donors. That's why it's a critical situation. So now I'm going to give you my forecast for the House and the Senate for the 2018 midterms. I'm also going to offer up another interesting little tidbit of something I think is going to happen. I am calling right now that on the morning after the November midterms, or as soon as the votes are all counted, I am calling for the Republicans at that point to be holding 57 seats in the Senate. 57 is the number that I believe the amount of Republican senators we will have when the smoke clears after the 2018 midterm election. 57 Republican senators is the number I'm going with. 57. In the House, I am predicting that we will hold on to the House with a narrow margin of 222 Republicans in the House. Control of the House requires 218. I believe we'll have about half a dozen over what we need. It's going to be close, but I'm predicting 222 House seats for the Republicans, 57 Senate seats. We hold on to the House, and we gain 6 seats in the Senate. That's what I'm predicting will happen in the 2018 midterms. 222 in the House, 57 in the Senate. I also want to go out and make another prediction. John Cox in California. I don't think he's going to win that race, and I'm not very happy about it. But I do think he's going to do much, much better than people think he's going to do. I don't think he can pull off the win. I'd love to see it, but I don't think he can do it. He's pretty far behind. Anything could happen. But I think that probably, unfortunately, Gavin Newsom is going to win that governor's race in California. But I think he's going to win it on a much slimmer margin than people think. I don't think he's going to win by 10 points going away. I think that race is going to be right around 5, 6, maybe 7 points, with Newsom winning by 5, 6, 7 points. But I also believe that he's going to be such a disaster, that he will be recalled. And there will be a recall election 2 years later in 2020 where Gavin Newsom will be recalled. And then they'll have another one of them crazy California elections. And possibly John Cox, some Republican, will win after the recall election in 2020 when Gavin Newsom is recalled because of his disastrous policies for the people of California. Those are my predictions for 2018 midterms. I'll be back with you tomorrow, and we'll start looking at these Senate races. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a good night. See you. Bye.